Afghanistan and Pakistan, and they all affect India directly. Plus, he's still claiming credit for the ceasefire, and New Delhi is still fact-checking him. We've lost count of how many times this has happened, so tonight we'll try to make sense of his words and actions. Meanwhile, he's had a phone conversation with Chinese President Xi Jinping, their first call in 3 months. We'll tell you what they discussed. In London, the government is preparing to recognize Palestine as a separate country. We'll tell you why this is significant. In the tech world, Nvidia pours $5 billion into Intel. Is it a lifeline or the first step in a takeover? And the big question for Apple fans, is orange really the new black? The iPhone 17 hits the shelves. In India, a millionaire spree is underway. We'll tell you what's driving the surge of wealth. France is back on the streets. Mass protests put President Macron on the spot. And the world has its first AI minister. That's right, a robot in politics. Also in focus, why Thailand and Cambodia are clashing again, and is the dodo coming back from extinction? All this and more lined up. The headlines first. Nepal's deposed Prime Minister speaks out for the first time since stepping down last Tuesday. Palki Sharma Oli says he did not order the police to open fire on protesters. He calls for a probe into the violence which killed more than 70 people. Oli blamed infiltrators for the bloodshed during the protest last week. Iran withdraws a draft resolution to ban attacks on its nuclear facilities. Tehran cites US pressure for the last-minute change as the United Nations is nuclear watchdog. After Iran's 12-day war with Israel in June, it had submitted a resolution condemning the attacks, but now Tehran says it will not be put up for a vote. Russia's foreign minister will meet his US counterpart next week on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. Moscow says there is no specific agenda for the meeting between Sergei Lavrov and Marco Rubio. In recent weeks, Donald Trump has expressed his frustration at Russia for not having struck a deal to end the war in Ukraine. At least 75 people have been killed in a drone strike in the Sudan. The paramilitary rapid support forces carried out this attack that hit a mosque at a camp for displaced people. The strike comes amid the RSF's attempt to capture Darfur's last army-held city. This would give the group full territorial control over the region. And India and Pakistan to clash again in the Asia Cup on Sunday. It will be in the Super 4 encounter in Dubai. This comes a week after their last match, which was overshadowed by a handshake row. India won that match by 7 wickets. Donald Trump has a full plate. He's brokering talks in Ukraine, he's pushing for progress in Gaza, and he's fighting a global tariff war. It's a busy slate for anyone. But even amid this chaos, Trump is adding a new area of focus, and it concerns India. The US president is making a series of moves. In Pakistan, he has reset the old ties. In Iran, he is sanctioning a key port project. And in Afghanistan, he is seeking the return of a strategic base. Basically, it's a major push into India's neighborhood. Let's look at each move, starting with Iran, where India is building a strategic port. It is located in the southern city of Chabahar. India is using this port, this Chabahar port, to access Central Asia. Look at the map. Chabahar can lead to Afghanistan, and Afghanistan leads to Central Asia, all of this without touching Pakistan. And that makes it a very important transit project for India, the Chabahar port. Last year, New Delhi signed a deal with Iran. It agreed to run a Chabahar terminal for 10 years. India also promised to pump in some money, $120 million in investments and $250 million in loans. This is over and above the $26 million that's already been spent on this. But that investment could now be at risk because of Donald Trump. You see, Trump has imposed crippling sanctions on Iran. They date back to his first term as president. But in 2018, he issued a waiver for Chabahar. Basically, the port was left out of his sanctions. Not anymore. Trump has lifted the sanctions waiver on Chabahar, so starting next month, all port entities will also be targeted. Say you finance parts of this port or you operate a terminal, then you will face the same sanctions as Iran. And this puts India in a bind. If you continue the project, you face US sanctions. If you abandon the project, you hurt Iran. So which way will India go? New Delhi says it is studying the US decision.
You would have seen the press statement which was issued by the US side yesterday on revocation of sanctions waiver that applies to Chabahar Port. We are presently examining the implications that this revocation has for India.
Let's turn to Afghanistan now. In his first term as president, Donald Trump ended American intervention in Afghanistan. He agreed to pull out US soldiers. Today, there are no US troops or assets in Afghanistan. Again, that may not be the case for long because Trump is now openly demanding a crucial base in the country. He wants the Bagram base just north of Kabul. It used to be the center of American power in Afghanistan. Trump says his original plan was to leave Afghanistan but retain Bagram. So he wants it back from the Taliban. Why? Well, he revealed the reason too.
We're going to leave Afghanistan, but we're going to leave it with strength and dignity. And we're going to keep Bagram, the big air base, one of the biggest air bases in the world. We gave it to them for nothing. We're trying to get it back, by the way. Okay, that could be a little breaking news. We're trying to get it back because they need things from us. We want that base back. But one of the reasons we want the base is, as you know, it's an hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapons.
The Taliban has responded. They're open to talks with the US, but on Bagram, it's a strict no. They do not want any more foreign troops on Afghan soil. Then you have Pakistan, a long-standing ally of the US. Trump has reset ties with Islamabad. After coming to office, he also approved a military package for them. In Bangladesh, the US military has become a regular guest. They have staged 3 drills in less than 60 days. Which brings us to India. Trump's India policy remains the same. On one hand, impose steep tariffs on Indian goods. On the other, sweet talk the leadership. And he did the same yesterday. Listen to what he said.
As you know, I'm very close to India. I'm very close to the Prime Minister of India. I spoke to him the other day, wished him a happy birthday. We have a very good relationship. He put out a beautiful statement too. But I said, I sanctioned them.
He says he sanctioned India. Well, technically he hasn't. He has only imposed secondary tariffs on India. But the word sanction is a big taboo in India. We faced the brunt of Western sanctions in the last century. It's a word that brings back a lot of anger. Not that Trump may care. He continues to dismiss India's concerns and sensitivities. Consider his remarks on Operation Sindoor, the latest ones. Everyone knows what happened. Indian missiles brought Pakistan to its knees, so Islamabad reached out for a ceasefire, but Trump is spinning his own tale. He has once again claimed that he mediated the truce.
We did 7, and most of them were not thought to be settleable. We did India and we did Pakistan. That's 2 nuclear. That was purely for trade. You want to trade with us, you're going to have to get along. And they were going at it hot and heavy.
So India clarified again. It has repeatedly pushed back against Trump's claims, and it did so again today. New Delhi said there was no role for a third party between India and Pakistan.
जहाँ तक थर्ड पार्टी की बात है, इसके बारे में हम लोगों ने बड़ा स्पष्ट रूप से पहले भी कहा है और आज भी कहेंगे कि जो द्विपक्षीय मुद्दे हैं भारत और पाकिस्तान के बीच में, इसमें थर्ड पार्टी का कोई रोल नहीं है. तो उसको फिर से मैं एक बार रेखांकित करना चाहता हूँ और स्पष्ट कर देना चाहता हूँ. देयर इज एब्सोल्युटली नो रोल फॉर थर्ड पार्टी मीडिएशन इन इंडिया पाकिस्तान इश्यूज.
Which brings us to the broader question. Why is Trump so interested in India's neighborhood? He is targeting Indian interests in Iran. He is seeking a military presence in Afghanistan. He is resetting ties with Pakistan. The question is why? Obviously, there is a China angle. Trump himself admitted that yesterday. He said he wants Bagram to keep tabs on a Chinese testing site. Same in Pakistan. He clearly wants to blunt Chinese influence in Pakistan, but in the process, he is hurting his ties with India. Does this represent a bigger pivot in Washington's approach? Until now, India was the cornerstone of America's China policy. Their leaders openly admitted it. They pitched India as a counterweight to China. Of course, New Delhi was not interested. India refused to become a pawn for US leaders. Is that why Trump is looking at Pakistan, Afghanistan and Iran to weaken China's grip on Asia? The fact is, we can't be sure. But here's what we can say. Trump's interest in South Asia is bad news, especially right now. This whole region is going through a churn. In recent years, governments have fallen in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh and Nepal. The last thing we need is American intervention. Let's see how India navigates this challenge. Our next story is from the United Kingdom. It is preparing to formally recognize the state of Palestine, a move that was decades in the making. On paper, this is a diplomatic gesture. In practice, it is a political earthquake. You see, the UK was the old colonial referee of West Asia. Now it is stepping into the field with a very different whistle. So what does this recognition mean? Why is it such a big deal? And why now, after years of delay and hesitation? Tonight, we'll break it down for you, starting with the update. What exactly is happening here? The United Kingdom has long been talking about recognizing Palestine as a separate country. Now they're finally doing it. Currently, 147 countries in the world recognize Palestine as a sovereign nation. That's 75% of all UN members. India is one of them. And soon the UK will join this list. What made them do it? Israel's recent strikes in Gaza may have precipitated it. The UK government called out these strikes. They criticized Israel, and perhaps this was the final push that London needed. Like I said, they've been talking about it for a while. In fact, the Labour Party promised to do this in their manifesto. So Keir Starmer's government was already under pressure, especially from Muslim voters in the UK. They were not happy with London's stance on Gaza. Labour's early hesitation on Gaza cost it dearly in cities like Leicester and Birmingham. Here, independent candidates jumped ahead. So this is Keir Starmer's attempt to win back trust. Basically, this recognition, the recognition of Palestine, kills two birds with one stone. The government of the United Kingdom sends a tough message to Israel, and it also keeps its vote bank happy.
So it's within that context of a plan for peace, which we're working hard on, which not only did we discuss this morning, but our two teams have been working together on, that the question of recognition needs to be seen. And so it's part of that overall package which hopefully takes us from the appalling situation we're in now to the outcome of a safe and secure Israel, which we do not have, and a viable Palestinian state.
But to really understand why this matters, you have to go back in time. In 1917, London issued the Balfour Declaration. It promised that Jewish people could have a homeland in Palestine. But there was a problem. Palestinians were already living there. After World War I, Britain was put in charge of this land. It tried to keep the peace, but it mostly made things worse. By 1947, Britain gave up. It handed this issue to the United Nations, and right after that, the first Arab-Israeli war began. So Britain has been both the referee and the spectator, which is why its recognition today really matters. And the UK is not acting in isolation. France is doing the same. They too plan to recognize Palestine, same with Australia, Canada and Malta. They will all recognize Palestine as a separate country at the United Nations General Assembly. It will take place in New York next week. And two parties are not happy about this development. The first, of course, is Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has accused UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer of appeasing Hamas.
I could never understand how this simple truth evades the leaders of France, Britain, Canada, and others. They're now proposing to establish a Palestinian state and reward these murderers with the ultimate prize. Well, for 18 years, we had a de facto Palestinian state. It's called Gaza. And what did we get? Peace? No. We got the most savage slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust.
So Netanyahu is unhappy. The other party that's unhappy is the United States. President Donald Trump has called the move, and I'm quoting, unhelpful. The US insists that the time is not right, but privately, even the Americans are frustrated with Netanyahu. The recent Israeli strikes on Doha were a major red flag. So Britain's decision may be inconvenient, but it won't rupture the UK-US ties.
We have to have the hostages back immediately. That's what the people of Israel want. They want them back, and we want the fighting to stop, and it's going to stop. But a lot of bad things. You know, Hamas said that they're going to put the hostages up as bait. They're going to put the hostages in front of any attack. And that's pretty brutal. We haven't heard that one in a long time. So we have to remember that. So I have a disagreement with the Prime Minister on that score. Okay? One of our few disagreements, actually.
The big question is this: what will this recognition change? Legally, recognition turns a Palestinian mission in London into an embassy. Diplomats gain new privileges and flags go up. But this is all largely symbolic. Beyond this, it does not change the ground reality of Palestine. Diplomatic recognition does not create a state. At best, it creates political momentum. Of course, recognition without follow-up risks being little more than a gesture. It won't stop the Israeli strikes. It won't ease Palestinian lives. So unless recognition is paired with real pressure, it could just be symbolic. So to conclude, yes, Britain's move is a historic marker. It closes a circle that began with the Balfour Declaration more than a century ago. But history is not about just symbols. The real test is whether this gesture translates into leverage, whether it ends the war in Gaza, whether it pushes the world closer to peace. Else, like so many times before, it will remain just another piece of paper in a very long file. The year was 2005. Intel's then CEO made a bold pitch to the board, a pitch to acquire Nvidia. Graphic chips that might revolutionize data centers. But the board did not agree. They did not agree with the steep price tag. So Intel passed the opportunity. 2 decades later, the tables have turned. Today, Nvidia is worth $4 trillion and it is writing Intel a $5 billion check. Nvidia has bought a $5 billion stake in Intel. The result is this: Intel stock soared 23% in a single day. Its biggest leap since 1984. For a company that is struggling, this kind of bump feels like oxygen after drowning. But here's a question on everyone's mind. Is this the start of Intel's comeback story, or is this just a temporary high? Let's look at their journey. Once upon a time, Intel was the chip maker. Its name defined Silicon Valley. The Intel Inside sticker was on almost every PC, every personal computer. Its engineers set the standard for cutting-edge processors. For decades, Intel dictated the pace of innovation, and then it stumbled. First, Intel missed the smartphone wave. Then Intel was slow to bet on artificial intelligence. Nvidia had bet early on GPUs, graphic processing units, for artificial intelligence. But Intel kept doubling down on the same things that it was doing. So it missed the AI race. By the time Intel realized this, it was no longer in the driver's seat. Others like Nvidia were far ahead. So Intel was left playing catch-up. Which brings us to the latest deal, the Nvidia-Intel deal. Nvidia needs Intel's crown jewel. That is the x86 CPUs. CPUs are central processing units. These are chips that still power most personal computers and servers. And that makes them essential for compatibility. So under the new deal, Intel will design custom CPUs. They will be tailor-made for Nvidia's AI servers. Nvidia will integrate those CPUs with its GPUs, its graphic processing units. This will create supercharged systems for data centers. So Nvidia gets better access to markets and Intel gets to stay in the game. It's a win-win for both. And there is a political subplot to this too. The US government recently took a 10% stake in Intel. So technically, the government is the biggest winner here. Washington had invested $9 billion in Intel. That investment is now worth almost $14 billion. So their stake is worth almost 50% more. Remember, Trump has openly lobbied to keep Intel alive. He sees it as a national security asset. In August, SoftBank invested $2 billion in Intel, and now Nvidia is investing $5 billion. You could say investing in Intel is also a way to curry favor with the White House, and that's what Nvidia is trying to do here. It is not just making a business deal, it is aligning itself with the Trump administration. But what does this really mean for Intel? Sure, the stock has surged. Sure, it's finally back in the headlines. But the deal does not solve Intel's foundry problem. Most of Nvidia's chips will still be built by TSMC, the Taiwanese company. This deal does not magically erase Intel's manufacturing delays or losses. At best, it buys them time. At worst, it risks making Intel a junior partner in its own industry. Think of it this way. Intel used to be the star batter in the team. Now it's the water boy, grateful to be on the field at all. Some reports suggest this could be step one towards Intel being acquired, or even for the company to be broken up. Of course, at this stage, this is all speculation, but the recent acquisitions do show a loss of control. Nvidia's stake gives it a seat at the table. The government's stake gives it a veto. SoftBank's money buys them influence. What's left is the irony of a once mighty company. It is surviving only because its rivals in Washington cannot afford to let it die. So no, Intel is not back, not yet. It may have got a lifeline, but this is Nvidia's world and Intel is just renting space in it. Apple launches stopped being about phones a long time ago. They're now global carnivals, and we saw one play out today. The new iPhone, the iPhone 17 and its many variants went on sale. This debut was as dramatic as the previous ones. There were midnight campers, fights in shopping malls, and even a few sick day excuses that HR departments did not buy. But beyond all this chaos, one shade has stolen the spotlight, cosmic orange. Apple has convinced millions that this shade is not just a finish, it's the need of the hour. Yes, orange is truly the new black. Our next report has more.
At 8 p.m. sharp in China, pre-orders went live. Within 1 minute, JD.com reported sales surpassing the entire first-day tally of last year's iPhone 16. That's not good start territory. That's K-pop concert tickets in Seoul territory. The base iPhone 17 was the darling of the crowd, with the Pro Max vanishing from Shanghai pickup slots in just 20 minutes. If you woke up Saturday morning in Guangzhou hoping to casually stroll in and grab one, sorry, your delivery estimate already reads mid-October. But India, of course, has become Apple's hottest growth story. Pre-bookings jumped 30 to 40% higher than the iPhone 16 launch last year. By 8 a.m., Apple's 4 stores in Mumbai, Delhi, Bengaluru, and Pune looked less like retail outlets and more like stadium gates on match day. In Delhi, queues spiraled across 2 floors. Some buyers confessed they'd been camped out since 1 a.m. A few admitted they'd called in sick to work. In Mumbai, however, the drama peaked. Videos captured fistfights breaking out as shoppers jumped queues. In India, the iPhone 17 is retailing for 82,900 rupees. The iPhone Air for 1,19,900 rupees. And the iPhone 17 Pro Max will cost you 1,49,900 rupees. And yet, Indians are lining up overnight, wallets in hand. Rent, EMI, or that Goa trip your friends keep planning, all can wait because Apple has dropped a new device. But this year, it isn't just the phones themselves causing the chaos. It's one particular color. Looks like orange is truly the new black. Apple's cosmic orange iPhone 17 Pro Max is the star of the show. Pre-orders for it disappeared instantly. In Vietnam, delivery timelines are weeks longer than other colors. In India, the orange model went on backorder almost instantly. And the people who did manage to snag one, they're treating it less like a phone and more like a trophy. The frenzy becomes even stranger when you remember this. The iPhone 17 isn't a revolution. There's no mind-bending new feature, no life-changing innovation. Apple hasn't dropped a wow moment since Face ID or AirPods. And yet, people are still queuing overnight, still fighting in Mumbai malls, still paying more than a month's rent for a slab of glass and aluminum. Why? Because Apple sells more than a phone. It sells bragging rights. Owning the latest iPhone isn't just about technology. It's about belonging to a global club, of being part of the Apple story. Analysts estimate that India could ship over 5 million iPhones this quarter alone. Globally, the iPhone 17 launch is pacing ahead of last year. So, in fashion, orange is the new black is a cliché. In iPhone land, it's suddenly gospel. Apple has taught us that a subtle shift in shade can spark stampedes. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Apple isn't just selling phones, it's selling desire, dressed up this year in an orange hue. So if you see someone flashing an orange iPhone 17 Pro Max, don't ask about the camera specs. Don't ask about the processor. Just ask the only question that matters. How long did you wait in line?
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Speaking with us here. The iPhone 17 has made a splash here in India. Mumbai witnessed chaotic scenes earlier today as a scuffle broke out outside the Apple store at Bagram complex. Even as we saw the iPhone 17 series hit the shelves in India, large crowds had gathered outside every store, not just in Mumbai, here in the national capital as well. Some people lining up since midnight or in the wee hours of the morning to get their hands on the new device. That led to a rush situation, at least in Mumbai. Amid that heavy footfall, a minor altercation erupted among a few people. It prompted immediate intervention by security personnel. The incident was quickly brought under control and no injuries were reported. And despite that disruption, excitement remained high as customers continued to queue up eagerly for the latest iPhone model.
Sale for iPhone 17 series has begun here in India, and here in New Delhi we have people lined up since early morning for the purchase. I can show you the visuals. In fact, this is the line where I'm showing you those who are in fact willing and interested in taking iPhone 17 and want to in fact get their piece. In fact, I am joined by some individuals who were there in line and have finally got their iPhones. Sir, what's your name? क्या नाम है आपका?
अंकित.
अंकित, कितने देख रहा हूँ काफी मल्टीपल पैकेज यू हैव गॉट. कितने फोन लिए हैं?
3 फोन लिए हैं मैंने.
और कौन कौन से?
प्रो मैक्स 512 है तीनों.
तीनों प्रो मैक्स 512. और टोटल कितने का पड़ा ये आपको?
ये पड़ा है 1,65,000.
1,65,000 फॉर वन. मतलब 1.5 लाख रुपए एक फोन के, और ऐसे करके आपने 4.5-5 लाख रुपए का स्पेंड किया. कब से प्री बुक किया हुआ था?
हाँ, ये 12 सितंबर को किया था.
12 सितंबर को किया था. और ये किस किस के लिए है? मतलब फैमिली में ही है या
वाइफ के लिए लिया है और एक और फादर के लिए.
और कितने बजे से लाइन में लगे हुए थे? हम मुंबई में तो देख रहे हैं कि लोग लड़ गए हैं एक दूसरे से. यहाँ पे आप कितने बजे से लाइन में लगे हुए थे?
मैं 8 बजे आया था.
हाँ.
और लेकिन मेरा स्लॉट 10:15 का था.
अच्छा.
तो उस हिसाब से एंट्री मिली.
तो इन्होंने स्लॉट वाइज कर रखा है. फिर क्या सिस्टम है पूरा, एक बार मेरे को समझाएं.
मतलब अगर आपका स्लॉट का टाइम ओवर हो गया तो आपको एंट्री देते हैं फिर.
अच्छा, मतलब आपको स्लॉट्स दे रखे हैं प्री बुकिंग के हिसाब से, और आपको उस हिसाब से आना है, और जब आपका स्लॉट आ जाएगा तो आपको
चांस मिलेगा अंदर.
यहाँ काफी लंबी लाइन थी क्या सुबह जब आप आए थे?
हाँ, और लंबी थी अभी.
और लंबी थी.
हाँ.
हमें बताया जा रहा है लोग 12 बजे से रात 12 बजे से वेट कर रहे हैं.
हाँ, कुछ लोग नहीं. मैं तो सुबह ही आया हूँ. मैं तो सुबह 8 बजे आया था. स्लॉट मेरा पहले का था 10:15 का, इसलिए एंट्री मिल गई जल्दी.
We have these individuals who have in fact got these in fact iPhones iPhone 17 series, in fact, the purchase has begun from today onwards. It was officially decided earlier and pre-booking was started. And today we have people lining up outside the iPhone store, in fact, Apple store here in Saket, where you have these individuals lining up for their piece, their iPhone 17. We know that how the official purchase has begun from today onwards, and the cost, if we talk about the cost, so it is starting from 82,900 to, in fact, and is going till 1,80,000.
एप्पल ने आईफोन 17 सीरीज़ जो है वो इंडिया में लॉन्च कर दी है और रात को 12 बजे से ही जो है लोग यहाँ पर लाइन में लगे हुए थे। आज सुबह में यहाँ पर 3000 से ज़्यादा का क्राउड हो गया था। दो गुटों के बीच में जो है वहाँ मारपीट भी हुई थी, लेकिन आखिरकार मुंबई पुलिस ने यहाँ पहुँचकर मामला संभाल दिया था। आप देखिए कि यहाँ पर लोगों की लंबी लंबी लाइनें हैं, लोग यहाँ पर आईफोन खरीदने के लिए आए। देखिए, जिन्होंने नया आईफोन 17 खरीदा है वो लोग अभी इस लाइन में हैं, और यहाँ पर ऐसे भी लोग हैं जिन्होंने ऑलरेडी आईफोन 17 जो मैक्स खरीद लिया है। तो आपने नया आईफोन खरीदा?
Yes,
कौन सा खरीदा?
17 Pro Max।
देख सकते हैं हम?
Yes, sure।
तो कौन से कलर का लिया आपने?
ब्लू कलर।
तो आप कितने टाइम से लाइन में खड़े थे?
नहीं, प्री बुक था, सो लाइन में वेट नहीं करना पड़ा ज़्यादा टाइम। तो
आपने प्री बुक ही कर लिया था?
ऑलरेडी प्री बुक किया हुआ था।
तो यहाँ पर लोग हैं जो यहाँ पर जो है एप्पल वॉच खरीदने के लिए भी आए हैं, वो लोग भी यहाँ लगे हैं। इसके अलावा जो इस बार का जो एयरपोर्ट है उसकी भी फीचर्स कई अलग हैं, वो अलग अलग लैंग्वेज में ट्रांसलेट करके देता है। और भी कुछ लोग हैं, आइए हम इनसे बात करते हैं। तो आपने आज जो आईफोन खरीदा, कौन सा वाला खरीदा?
मैंने लिया है आईफोन 17 प्रो डीप ब्लू 256 GB।
इसमें कौन सा अच्छा फीचर लगा आपको?
सो इसमें मुझे पिक्चर इन पिक्चर वीडियो रिकॉर्डिंग बहुत अच्छा लगा। इसमें ऐसा है फीचर, अगर आप कोई कॉन्सर्ट में हो या फिर कोई पार्टीज़ में हो, अगर आपको सामने का जो इवेंट हो रहा है उसका वीडियो रिकॉर्ड करते करते खुद का रिएक्शन लेना है, तो दिस इज़ अ वेरी गुड फीचर जो मैं प्रेफर करना चाहूँगा।
Well, we are right now at the Apronic store where we see that today. Well, we are right now at the Apronic store where we see that today is where we see that
There are many ways to judge an economy. You've got GDP growth, you've got per capita numbers, but tonight we're focusing on something else altogether, on wealth creation. Have Indians become more affluent in recent years? If so, what is driving this affluence? And how does it compare to other countries like China? It's a natural comparison because of our situations. Same population, same region. These numbers have been published in a new report, the 2025 Mercedes-Benz Hurun report. They track wealth creation and millionaires across countries. Now look at their data for India. In 2021, there were 450,000 millionaire households, 450,000 millionaire families. Basically, these were families with 8.5 crore rupees. That's $1 million US. In 2025, that number has surged to 870,000 families, meaning millionaire families have almost doubled since 2021. As expected, the big metros dominate this list. Mumbai is India's undisputed millionaire capital. The city has 142,000 such families. Delhi is second with 68,000, and IT capital Bengaluru is third with 31,000 such families. Overall, wealth creation is solid. In fact, the Hurun report also publishes an index, the MBHX. It tracks wealth creation in a country. How? By compiling and analyzing multiple data points, like the stock market performance, the national GDP, even the sales of Mercedes cars. All of these are compiled to arrive at an index of wealth creation. And this index has surged almost 200% in India. Again, the question is how? How are so many Indians becoming more affluent? Well, the national trajectory helps. India is the fastest growing major economy in the world. When the country booms, the people get rich. It's a natural progression. But beyond that, there's another reason. Indian family assets have boomed. Consider three main avenues of investments. Number one is stocks. We'll take India's first COVID lockdown as a starting point. From there, the Sensex has risen 176%. Imagine that, 176% rise in around 6 years. If you held on to your equity, chances are you hit a jackpot. So that's one asset, stocks. Number 2 is gold. Again, let's rewind to the lockdown. Gold was selling for 45,000 rupees in March 2020. That's 45,000 rupees for 10 grams of gold. And today, more than 1,12,000. That's almost a 150% rise in around 6 years. Finally, asset number 3, real estate. Let's look at the national capital, Delhi. Prices here, real estate prices have risen by 81% in the last 5 years. Do you see the impact? The boom in asset value has created immense wealth for Indians. Which brings us to the final question. How does it compare to countries like China? Well, China has 5.1 million millionaire households. India has just 870,000. Same with high net worth families. These are households with $1.2 to $1.4 million. India has 590,000 of them. 5,90,000 such families. China has more than 2 million. Finally, look at the ultra high net worth families. These are households with over $12 million. India has 66,000 such families, ultra high net worth. China has more than 130,000. So as things stand, there is a sizable gap. On the global stage, China ranks second. The US is a distant first with 22 million millionaires. The UK is third with 3.1 million. France has 2.9 million. And Japan 2.8 million. So there's a lot of catching up to do for India. But here's the good news. India's trajectory is impressive. Our GDP is expected to double in the 2030s, and that will boost affluence as well. India is projected to have 130,000 ultra-rich families by the next decade. Meaning, we will match China's numbers. But I know what you're thinking. Does millionaire count matter, especially for a country as large as ours? Well, wealth creation is key part of economic progress. When people get rich or richer, they spend more. More spending equals more consumption equals more economic activity, and that's the chain reaction of wealth creation. At the same time, India must be mindful of its wealth gap too. The top 1% of our population controls 40% of our wealth. 40% of our wealth is with the top 1% of the population. Addressing this is key because billionaires alone cannot drive growth, especially if most of their money is just stuck in land and gold. What we need is sustainable and equitable wealth creation. Now let's talk about the Trump-Xi phone call. The most anticipated event of the day, you could say. All eyes were on the leaders of the US and China, Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. Everyone was expecting a big announcement, a breakthrough on the TikTok deal. But it did not come. Chinese state media outlet Xinhua released a statement after the call. It said the conversation was, and I'm quoting, the conversation was positive and constructive. That's the official line, and that's pretty much what they said. The message from Beijing was firm. According to Xinhua, Xi Jinping said China's position on TikTok has not changed. He urged the US to stop using unilateral tariffs. Xi said China wants, and I'm quoting again, China wants a balance of interests on TikTok. At least that's how Xinhua summed it up. The official readout offered no breakthrough, no clear deal, just broad statements. Xi told Trump that US-China trade ties are important and that Beijing respects, and I'm quoting again, Beijing respects corporate will. In fact, I have the full quote with me. This is what it says. On TikTok, Xi said China's position was clear. The Chinese government respects corporate will and welcomes companies to conduct business negotiations on the basis of market rules to reach a situation consistent with Chinese laws and regulations and a balance of interests. A few moments back, we also heard from Donald Trump, the US president. As always, Trump is offering a very different version of events. Trump posted a statement on Truth Social. He listed out everything he discussed with Xi Jinping: trade, the fentanyl crisis, Ukraine, and of course TikTok. And Trump says progress was made on all fronts, especially on the TikTok deal. Trump suggests that Beijing has signed off on it, that they've agreed to the deal. And he thanked Xi Jinping for the quote-unquote approval. The Chinese statement, though, made no such mention. So the future of TikTok still hangs in the balance. And Trump has made one more announcement in his post. He says he will meet Xi Jinping next month in South Korea. Seoul is hosting the APEC summit in October. APEC stands for the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum. So both leaders are set to meet on the sidelines of this summit. Bilateral visits are also on the cards. Trump says he plans to visit China next year, and Xi Jinping will travel to the US, although Trump did not share any dates. He said President Xi, and I'm quoting again, President Xi will come to the US at an appropriate time. Now, this was the third call between the two leaders this year. The first one happened in January, just days after Donald Trump took office for the second time. Xi Jinping called to congratulate him. It was a courtesy call. Their second call happened in the month of June. This time, there was a lot on the agenda. The leaders spoke about trade, tariffs, and market access. That phone call led to a series of meetings. Since then, the US and Chinese officials have met multiple times. There have been at least 3 rounds of high-level talks in London, in Stockholm, and just last week in Madrid. Now, so far, these meetings have delivered little. There has been no major breakthrough on trade, not even on TikTok. Before today's call, though, Donald Trump made it sound like he had a deal in the bag. Statements were made about the deal's broad framework. The Trump administration claimed that TikTok in America will have American ownership and that its Chinese parent, ByteDance, will be a minority partner. That's what they said. Further, the data of American users will remain in the US. And Trump had hinted that China has approved this deal.
I'm speaking with President Xi, as you know, on Friday, having to do with TikTok and also trade, and we're very close to deals on all of it. And my relationship with China is very good. You know, we have a trade deal with them. We had a very good meeting the other day, and it sounds like they've approved TikTok, and TikTok is a tremendous amount of money for the United States.
Well, that's what he said before the call, but clearly that's not how it's played out. Both sides have called the phone call positive. But their statements only show how far apart they are in their takeaways. And Trump clearly has his work cut out before he meets Xi Jinping next month. What does a country look like when daily life stops? We saw the answer this week in France yet again, where trains stood still, schools emptied out, pharmacies closed, hospital staff walked off the job. Even teenagers blocked the gates of their high schools, all to send a message to President Emmanuel Macron and his new Prime Minister, Sébastien Lecornu. Stop the austerity and scrap the budget cuts. Now, this was not a local protest. This was a nationwide strike from Paris to Marseille, from Lyon to Lille. Daily life was disrupted. Take a look at this.
Casse-toi, 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 casse-toi d'ici. Allez, allez.
So why are people in France so angry? Because France has a big problem with debt. It means their government has spent more than it earned, so it is under a pile of debt, and now it has to find ways to pay that money back. Now, to give you some perspective, last year the deficit was almost double the EU's limit. Deficit is the gap between earnings and spending. The EU limit is 3% of GDP. For France, this figure was 5.8% of their GDP. Clearly, that's a problem. That's how big their debt is. To deal with it, the government decided to cut spending. This is what they call austerity. It means living within your means and spending less on public services. This decision cost the Prime Minister his job. We are talking about François Bayrou. He was Prime Minister until last month. He proposed cuts worth 44 billion euros. That's about 55 billion US dollars. His plan included freezing pensions. That's the money that people get after they retire. He also wanted to remove 2 public holidays, 2. That would mean 2 extra days of work for the people. But they wanted none of it. This plan made the people of France very angry. The first casualty was the Prime Minister himself. He lost a trust vote in Parliament. He had to resign. So President Macron picked a new Prime Minister, a man called Sébastien Lecornu. He is young, he is close to Macron, and he is being presented as a fresh start. Just one problem though. The people of France do not seem to be convinced. To them, he looks like more of the same. And this has made them angrier. Their protests show their frustration. A mock guillotine was pushed through Paris. A guillotine is a machine from the French Revolution. It was used to execute leaders. Here, it was used as a symbol. Union flags filled the streets. In Marseille, people sang Bella Ciao. It is an old song against fascism. Students chained the gates of their schools. Some held signs that said, tax the rich, and others said that Macron must resign.
The government needs to understand that we are fed up with austerity, that there are real measures that need to be taken to save France. But these aren't the ones that need to be taken against workers. These are measures that need to be taken at the government level and the savings that need to be made.
This was the feeling across France. People said they were tired of paying the price. The government responded with force at some places. 80,000 police and paramilitary officials were deployed. There were armored vehicles, drones and water cannons. The police even used tear gas in Paris, also in Lyon and Nantes. Hundreds were arrested, but the protests kept going. French unions said that about 1 million people had joined. The government said it was just over half of that. Whatever the number, the crowds looked very big. It was one of the biggest protests since the 2023 pension reforms. And the timing is worth noting. President Macron has less than 2 years left in office. His approval ratings are low. His parliament is hung. No party has a majority. And that means it is hard to pass any budget. This impasse makes the streets more powerful. The Prime Minister is trying to offer concessions. He has promised to end lifetime privileges for former Prime Ministers. He has also scrapped the plan to remove 2 public holidays. But the unions call this window dressing. They say the whole budget has to be changed. And they have set a deadline, September 24th. They want a clear answer from the government by then. If not, they say there will be more strikes and more protests.
The ball is now in the Prime Minister's court. If by September 24th he has not responded to their demands, the trade unions will meet to quickly decide on a new day of strike action and demonstrations.
So step back and look at the bigger picture. The protests were about money, yes, but they were also about fairness. A government trying to cut spending, a public that felt they had nothing left to give, and a political system struggling to bring both sides together. But above all, these protests were about power. Power in parliament and power on the streets. Right now, the streets are louder, and they have put the government on notice.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Speaking with us here. The iPhone 17 has made a splash here in India. Mumbai witnessed chaotic scenes earlier today as a scuffle broke out outside the Apple store at Bagram complex. Even as we saw the iPhone 17 series hit the shelves in India, large crowds had gathered outside every store, not just in Mumbai, here in the national capital as well. Some people lining up since midnight or in the wee hours of the morning to get their hands on the new device. That led to a rush situation, at least in Mumbai. Amid that heavy footfall, a minor altercation erupted among a few people. It prompted immediate intervention by security personnel. The incident was quickly brought under control and no injuries were reported. And despite that disruption, excitement remained high as customers continued to queue up eagerly for the latest iPhone model.
Sale for iPhone 17 series has begun here in India, and here in New Delhi we have people lined up since early morning for the purchase. I can show you the visuals. In fact, this is the line where I'm showing you those who are in fact willing and interested in taking iPhone 17 and want to in fact get their piece. In fact, I am joined by some individuals who were there in line and have finally got their iPhones. Sir, what's your name? क्या नाम है आपका?
अंकित.
अंकित, कितने देख रहा हूँ काफी मल्टीपल पैकेज यू हैव गॉट. कितने फोन लिए हैं?
3 फोन लिए हैं मैंने.
और कौन कौन से?
प्रो मैक्स 512 है तीनों.
तो तीनों प्रो मैक्स 512. और टोटल कितने का पड़ा ये आपको?
ये पड़ा है 1,65,000.
1,65,000 फॉर वन. मतलब 1.5 लाख रुपए एक फोन के, और ऐसे करके आपने 4.5-5 लाख रुपए का स्पेंड किया. कब से प्री बुक किया हुआ था?
हाँ, ये 12 सितंबर को किया था.
12 सितंबर को किया था. और ये किस किस के लिए है? मतलब फैमिली में ही है या
वाइफ के लिए लिया है और एक और फादर के लिए.
और कितने बजे से लाइन में लगे हुए थे? हम मुंबई में तो देख रहे हैं कि लोग लड़ गए हैं एक दूसरे से. यहाँ पे आप कितने बजे से लाइन में लगे हुए थे?
मैं 8 बजे आया था.
हाँ.
और लेकिन मेरा स्लॉट 10:15 का था.
अच्छा.
तो उस हिसाब से एंट्री मिली.
तो इन्होंने स्लॉट वाइज कर रखा है. हाँ. क्या सिस्टम है पूरा, एक बार मेरे को समझाएं.
मतलब अगर आपका स्लॉट का टाइम ओवर हो गया तो आपको एंट्री देते हैं फिर.
अच्छा, मतलब आपको स्लॉट्स दे रखे हैं प्री बुकिंग के हिसाब से, और आपको उस हिसाब से आना है, और जब आपका स्लॉट आ जाएगा तो आपको
चांस मिलेगा अंदर.
यहाँ काफी लंबी लाइन थी क्या सुबह जब आप आए थे?
हाँ, और लंबी थी अभी.
और लंबी थी.
हाँ.
हमें बताया जा रहा है लोग 12 बजे से रात 12 बजे से वेट कर रहे हैं.
हाँ, कुछ लोग नहीं. मैं तो सुबह ही आया हूँ. मैं तो सुबह 8 बजे आया था. स्लॉट मेरा पहले का था 10:15 का, इसलिए एंट्री मिल गई जल्दी.
We have these individuals who have in fact got these in fact iPhones. iPhone 17 series, in fact, the purchase has begun from today onwards. It was officially decided earlier and pre-booking was started. And today we have people, lining up outside the iPhone store, in fact, Apple store here in Saket, where you have these individuals lining up for their piece, their iPhone 17. We know that how the official purchase has begun from today onwards, and the cost. If we talk about the cost, so it is starting from 82,900 to, in fact, and is going till 1,80,000.
एप्पल ने आईफोन 17 सीरीज़ जो है वो इंडिया में लॉन्च कर दी है और रात को 12 बजे से ही जो है लोग यहाँ पर लाइन में लगे हुए थे. आज सुबह में यहाँ पर 3,000 से ज़्यादा का क्राउड हो गया था. 2 गुटों के बीच में जो है वहाँ मारपीट भी हुई थी, लेकिन आखिरकार मुंबई पुलिस ने यहाँ पहुँचकर मामला संभाल दिया था. आप देखिए कि यहाँ पर लोगों की लंबी लंबी लाइनें हैं. लोग यहाँ पर आईफोन खरीदने के लिए आए. देखिए, जिन्होंने नया आईफोन 17 खरीदा है वो लोग अभी इस लाइन में है. और यहाँ
Now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In Belgium, a farmer shows off his uniquely pruned trees. In Hawaii, officials release footage of a volcanic eruption. And in Paris, President Macron tours the restored Notre Dame bell towers. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1893, New Zealand granted voting rights to women. It was the first country in the world to do so. Months later, in December, New Zealand's women cast their first ballots. Most other countries granted this right in the 20th century. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend.
Hello and welcome to the late night edition with me, Ayushman Singh John. Well, big breaking news coming in on the international front. United States President Donald Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping held a phone conversation a short while back. Trump has tweeted, and I quote, "I just completed a very productive call with President Xi of China. We made progress on many very important issues, including trade, fentanyl smuggling, the need to bring the war between Russia and Ukraine to an end, and the approval of the TikTok deal." Meanwhile, Xi Jinping has said that China and the United States